Hello, everyone, and welcome to our English Learning Podcast. We're so happy you're here with us today. My name is Emma, and I'll be your guide on this journey of learning and discovery.
And I'm Jake. We're really excited to start this episode with you. Today, we're talking about something that can completely change the way you learn English. It's something simple but powerful. It's curiosity.
Exactly. Curiosity is what makes learning feel alive. When you're curious, you don't just study English, you explore it. You want to understand how words work, why people say things a certain way, and what those little differences in meaning are.
You know, I used to think learning English was just about memorizing words and grammar rules. But once I got curious, really curious, everything changed. I started asking questions like, why do people say break a leg before a performance? Or where does that phrase even come from?
That's such a good example. When you're curious, learning becomes more interesting and personal. For me, it started with travel. I wanted to know how to talk about places, directions, food, and all those little details you need when you travel. I wasn't studying because I had to. I was learning because I wanted to understand the world better.
And that's what curiosity does. It makes learning fun. You stop feeling like you're in a classroom and you start feeling like an explorer discovering a new world of words.
Curiosity also helps you remember things. When something truly interests you, your brain keeps it. For example, if you're curious about how people greet each other in different countries, you'll remember the words because they have meaning to you.
Right. It's not about studying harder. It's about being more interested. When you're curious, English becomes more than just a subject. It becomes a key to understanding people, stories, and ideas.
That's exactly why our theme today is Follow Your Curiosity. It's the best guide you can have when learning a language.
So if you've ever felt bored or stuck while studying, don't worry. You don't need to force yourself to memorize everything. Just follow what makes you curious. Maybe it's music, maybe movies, maybe learning about a new culture.
The more you explore, the more your English will grow naturally. And we'll be here to help you notice those little things that make English beautiful and full of meaning.
You know, Emma, something funny happened the other day. I heard the word curiosity again while watching a video, and for a moment, I realized that years ago, I didn't even know what that word meant.
Really? That's interesting. What did you think it meant back then?
Honestly, I had no idea. I just kept hearing people say things like, out of curiosity, and I pretended to understand. Later, I decided to look it up, and that small moment of curiosity helped me remember the word forever.
That's such a perfect example of how curiosity helps us learn new words. When you notice a word and you feel that little spark of interest, that's the moment your brain is ready to remember it. You can ask yourself, what does this mean? Or how can I use this in a sentence?
Exactly. And sometimes, even if you don't have a dictionary, you can try to guess the meaning from the context. Like if someone says, out of curiosity, where did you buy that? You can guess that curiosity means wanting to know something.
Yes, and another good trick is to break words down. English words often come from older languages, like Latin or French. For example, the word curiosity comes from the word curious, which means wanting to know. So curiosity is the noun form. It's the feeling or quality of being curious.
That's so true. When I learned that, I started noticing other words that work the same way, like happy and happiness or creative and creativity. It's like they're part of the same family.
Exactly. And when you think of words as being related, it's easier to remember them. You can connect them in your mind instead of memorizing them separately.
You know what's a fun one? The word breakfast. When I first learned that, I thought it was just a normal word. But then I found out it actually means to break your fast, the fast from sleeping overnight.
That's a great example. When you discover the meaning behind a word, it becomes more than just vocabulary. It becomes a story, something alive in your mind.
And when you feel curious about words, you start noticing little details everywhere. How people use them, how they sound, and how they change depending on the situation.
Exactly. Curiosity makes you pay attention to those details. And that's how you really start to understand English, not just memorize it.
So the next time you hear a word you don't know, don't just skip it. Stop for a second, think about it, ask about it, or look it up.
That one small moment can help you remember it for life.
Yes, because every new word you learn through curiosity becomes a part of your English story.
You know, Emma, one of the hardest moments for me when I was learning English was during real conversations. I'd be talking to someone and suddenly they'd use a phrase I'd never heard before.
Oh, I know that feeling. It can be a bit uncomfortable, right? You don't want to interrupt or seem confused, but you also really want to understand what they mean.
Exactly. I remember once someone said, "I'll keep you posted," and I just smiled and said, "Thanks," even though I had no idea what it meant. Later, I learned it means they'll update you or give you new information.
That's such a good example. And you know what? It's completely okay to ask for clarification. You can simply say, "What do you mean by that?" Or, "Can you explain that a little more?" It's polite and it shows that you're interested in understanding.
Right, and most people are happy to explain. In fact, when you ask questions, you make the conversation more natural. It's better than pretending to understand and missing the meaning.
Absolutely. Curiosity helps keep conversations alive. When you show genuine interest, people want to talk more. You can use small expressions to show that you're listening, like, "Really? That's interesting," or, "Oh, I see." These little responses make you sound more engaged and confident.
I started practicing that a lot. When someone tells me a story, I try to react naturally. If they say something surprising, I might say, "Wow, I didn't know that," or "That's amazing." It keeps the conversation flowing.
And that's how curiosity helps you connect with people. When you listen carefully, not just to reply, but to understand, you learn more about language and people at the same time.
Exactly. I used to think that speaking English well meant knowing big words, but now I realize it's more about listening carefully and being curious about what others say.
That's such an important point. The best conversations come from curiosity, wanting to know more about the other person's thoughts, stories, or culture. When you ask questions, you learn new words, new expressions, and even new ways of thinking.
You're right. Once, a friend used the phrase "hit the road." I was confused, but instead of pretending, I asked what it meant. They explained it means to start a journey or leave a place. And because I was curious, I've never forgotten it.
And that's the power of curiosity. It turns a simple chat into a lesson you'll remember forever. So the next time you're in a conversation in English, don't be afraid to ask, to listen, and to show interest.
Because every question you ask and every word you notice brings you closer to becoming a confident English speaker.
You know, Jake, one of my favorite things about learning English is that it's like opening a window to the world. When you speak English, you're not just learning a language, you're discovering cultures, traditions, and ways of thinking that come from so many different places.
That's so true. I remember the first time I watched an English movie without subtitles. I didn't understand everything, but I started getting curious about the jokes, the accents, and even the food they talked about. It made me want to know more about the people behind the language.
Exactly. Curiosity about culture makes learning English so much richer. For example, when someone says it's raining cats and dogs, it sounds funny at first, right? But then you start wondering, why do people say that? What does it really mean?
Yeah, that one confused me for a long time. When I first heard it, I literally looked outside thinking, why are they talking about animals? Later, I learned it just means it's raining very heavily. And once I understood where it came from, I never forgot it.
That's the beauty of cultural expressions. They carry stories, history, and humor. Every idiom or saying tells you something about how people think and live.
I agree. Like in English, people often say, "the ball is in your court," which comes from sports. It means it's your turn to make a decision. Once you understand the cultural background, it suddenly makes sense.
Right, and when you're curious, you start noticing these expressions in songs, movies, and conversations. You begin to understand not just what people say, but why they say it that way.
That's one of the reasons I love learning through movies and music. When I listen to a song, I try to imagine what kind of feeling or story the singer is expressing. Sometimes one line can tell you so much about their culture or attitude toward life.
Yes, and being curious about culture also means being open-minded. You might hear humor or traditions that are different from your own, and that's okay. Asking questions like, why do people celebrate this holiday? Or what does that phrase mean in your country? Helps you connect and understand.
Definitely. I once joined an online group where people from different countries shared jokes and idioms from their cultures. It was amazing to see how each language had its own way of expressing the same ideas. It made me realize how learning English connects you to people everywhere.
That's such a great example, because when you learn English, you're not just learning a skill, you're learning how to see the world through new eyes.
Exactly. Every word, every phrase, and every story in English is a little piece of a bigger picture. And the more curious you are, the clearer that picture becomes.
So remember, learning English isn't just about words or grammar. It's about people, their lives, their humor, their traditions, and their stories.
And the more curious you are about those things, the deeper your understanding will grow.
Curiosity connects language and culture. It helps you not only speak English, but also feel it and live it.
You know, Emma, when I first started learning English, I made so many mistakes. I remember once I said I am boring instead of I am bored. Everyone laughed, and I felt so embarrassed.
You know, Emma, when I first started learning English, I made so many mistakes. I remember once I said I am boring instead of I am bored. Everyone laughed, and I felt so embarrassed. Oh, I've heard that one before. It's such a common mistake, but it's actually a great learning moment. When you said, I am boring, you were saying you make other people bored, not that you feel bored yourself.
Exactly. I didn't know that at the time, but once someone explained it to me, I never forgot. That's when I realized that mistakes aren't something to fear. They're signs that you're learning.
That's such an important lesson. A lot of learners are afraid to speak because they don't want to make mistakes. But the truth is, mistakes are your best teachers. Each one shows you what you can improve, and curiosity helps you understand why it was wrong.
Right. I used to just memorize the correct answer without asking why. But when I started asking questions like, why is it bored and not boring? Or why do we say it this way? I began to understand the language on a deeper level.
Exactly. When you're curious about your mistakes, you learn faster. You start to see patterns in grammar, pronunciation, and even word choice. You stop being afraid and start feeling excited to figure things out.
You know, sometimes I even laugh at my old mistakes now. I remember once I told a friend, I cooked a new recipe yesterday, but it exploded. I meant it just didn't turn out well, but the word exploded made everyone laugh.
That's such a funny image. And that's the great thing about being curious. You can find humor in your mistakes. It makes the process less stressful and more enjoyable.
Exactly. And after that, I learned a better way to say it. Now I would say, it didn't go as planned, or it turned out badly. That one mistake taught me several new phrases.
See, that's how curiosity turns mistakes into lessons. Instead of feeling bad, you start thinking, okay, what happened here? How can I say it better next time?
And that mindset changes everything. When you're curious, you don't stop at, I made a mistake. You go further and ask, why did I make it? And what can I learn from it?
Exactly. Curiosity gives you confidence. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to keep exploring. Every time you make a mistake and learn from it, your English gets stronger.
That's so true. I've noticed that the people who improve the fastest are the ones who ask the most questions. They don't hide their mistakes, they study them.
Yes, and they see every error as a step forward, not backward. Because when you're curious, you realize that mistakes aren't failures. They're progress in disguise.
So if you ever feel nervous about speaking or writing, remember, every mistake is a lesson waiting to happen.
Stay curious about your errors, laugh at them, learn from them, and keep moving forward.
Because the most curious learners are the ones who never stop improving.
You know, Jake, one of the best ways to feed your curiosity and grow your English is through reading. It doesn't have to be long books or complicated texts. Even small things you read every day can help you learn so much.
I totally agree. When I started paying attention to little things like signs, menus, and even subtitles on shows, I realized I was learning new words without even trying. It became a habit. I'd see a word and think, what does that mean? Or why is it written that way?
That's exactly how curiosity works. Reading gives you tiny puzzles to solve. For example, you might see the word sale in a store window and wonder, does it mean something is being sold or is it cheaper? Then you start noticing how people use it in different places and it becomes clear.
Yes, and I found that reading short stories or news articles helped me a lot. I'd come across a word I didn't know, and instead of stopping every time to look it up, I tried to guess the meaning from the context. Sometimes I was wrong, but even that helped me remember it later.
That's a great strategy. Guessing from context keeps your brain active. You don't have to understand every word to understand the story. Your curiosity helps you fill in the gaps.
I remember reading a story once with the phrase under the weather. At first, I thought it was about the weather, but then I realized the character was sick. I looked it up later and learned it's an idiom that means feeling ill.
That's such a perfect example. When you read with curiosity, you're not just collecting vocabulary, you're discovering meanings, idioms, and expressions in their natural context. That's how native speakers learn too.
Exactly. And I also started writing down interesting phrases I found while reading. Later, I'd try to use them in my conversations. That made them stick in my mind even more.
That's a great habit. And it's not just about learning new words, it's also about how words work together. Reading helps you see grammar and sentence structure in a natural way. You start recognizing patterns without needing to memorize long rules.
I think that's what makes reading so powerful. You can learn vocabulary, grammar, and pronunciation clues all at once, just by being curious and paying attention.
Yes, and the best part is that it can be enjoyable. You can read what you love, stories, blogs, song lyrics, or even recipes. When you choose topics that make you curious, learning feels effortless.
That's what happened to me with travel articles. I love learning about places, and as I read more, I found myself picking up new words like adventure, journey, and destination. Those words stuck because they connected with my interests.
Exactly. Curiosity makes reading fun and personal. You're not just learning words, you're exploring ideas that matter to you.
So, if you want to make progress in English, read something every day. It doesn't matter how small it is. Just notice, wonder, and enjoy.
Because every line you read with curiosity opens a new door to understanding.
And every new word you discover becomes a step forward on your English journey. You know, Emma, another way curiosity helps with learning English is through listening. I used to think listening was just about hearing the words, but now I know it's about really paying attention to meaning, tone, and emotion.
That's such an important point. Listening is one of the best ways to train your ear for English. When you're curious about what people are saying and how they're saying it, you start to notice so many little details.
Exactly. I remember listening to English songs and trying to catch every word. Sometimes I didn't understand the lyrics, but I still wanted to know what they meant. I'd look them up later, and that helped me remember both the words and their pronunciation.
Yes, music is a great teacher because it connects emotion and language. When you're curious about the meaning behind a song, it sticks in your mind. You start noticing rhythm, pronunciation, and even slang or idioms.
I also noticed that when I watched movies or podcasts in English, I learned more when I focused on the emotion behind the words, like how a person's tone changes when they're excited, serious, or surprised. It made me realize that listening isn't just about understanding words. It's about feeling what's being said.
That's so true. Tone and emotion are like invisible parts of language. For example, if someone says, "Really?" in a high tone, it can mean surprise or interest. But if they say, "Really?" in a low, flat voice, it can mean disbelief or disappointment. Curiosity helps you notice those small but powerful differences.
I love that. And when I started listening to different accents, I became even more curious. British, American, Australian, they all sound so different. At first, it was confusing, but then it became fun. I started asking myself, why does this sound different? What are they saying that's unique?
That's the right attitude. Being curious about accents helps you understand how flexible English is. It's spoken all over the world, so every accent carries a bit of culture and personality.
I even started repeating short phrases I heard just to practice pronunciation. Sometimes I'd pause a podcast and try to copy the way the speaker said something.
It made me more confident when speaking later.
That's a fantastic exercise. When you listen actively, when you ask questions like, what did that word mean? Or why did they sound excited there? You train your brain to understand naturally.
Yes, and curiosity keeps you from getting frustrated. Even if you miss a few words, you focus on the main idea and the feeling instead of giving up.
Exactly. Perfection isn't the goal. Understanding is. And when you stay curious, you keep listening and you keep improving.
I've realized that the best listeners are the most curious ones. They don't just hear, they explore.
That's a beautiful way to say it. Curiosity turns listening into learning. Every conversation, every song, every movie becomes a classroom.
So, next time you listen to English, don't just let the words pass by. Notice the sounds, the tone, and the feelings behind them.
Because the more curious you are when you listen, the faster you'll understand, and the deeper your English will grow, Jake. You know, Jake, we've talked about listening, reading, and learning from mistakes, but there's one area where curiosity really gives people confidence: speaking.
That's so true. I remember when I first started speaking English, I was so afraid of saying something wrong that I almost didn't speak at all. But once I started treating every conversation as an experiment, everything changed.
Speaking English is like an experiment. You try new phrases, test ideas, and learn as you go. Curiosity gives you the courage to speak, even when you're not completely sure what to say.
That's true. I used to practice by describing what I saw around me in English. Simple things like, the coffee smells strong, or that person looks tired. It helped me speak more naturally.
That's a great technique. It turns your curiosity into real practice. You're not memorizing, you're exploring how words fit together.
I also asked my friends for feedback. I'd say, does this sound natural, or is there a better way to say it? I was curious, not embarrassed, and that made me improve faster.
Exactly. Asking questions isn't weakness, it's growth. People love helping someone who's genuinely curious.
And sometimes I'd play with new words. If I learned a phrase like, take your time, I'd use it in different situations to see how it felt.
That's the perfect mix of curiosity and courage. The more you experiment, the more confident you become.
Most learners wait to feel ready, but curiosity makes you ready. You learn to speak by trying, not by waiting.
Every conversation is a chance to discover something new. Even if you make mistakes, you're still learning.
I once told a friend about my weekend, and when I didn't know a word, I just explained around it. They understood and taught me new phrases.
That's exactly how curiosity helps you grow. It keeps you going even when you don't know everything.
Speaking stopped feeling scary and started feeling like exploring a new place.
Because speaking is exploring. Every word you say is a step forward.
So don't wait for perfection. Be curious, speak often, and let your curiosity guide you.
Every conversation helps you learn something new about English and about yourself.
And curiosity doesn't stop there. Writing can be just as powerful.
Definitely. Writing gives you time to think, experiment, and express yourself. It's like having a quiet conversation with your thoughts in English.
I started journaling about my day. I didn't worry about grammar. I just wrote what I felt and learned. It helped me notice patterns and remember new words.
That's the beauty of writing. You can ask yourself, is there a better word for this? Or how can I make this clearer? That curiosity keeps your writing alive.
Sometimes I'd write, I had a busy day, then try other versions like, it was hectic or my schedule was full. Just one question could lead to new vocabulary.
And writing doesn't have to be serious. You can write stories, poems, or letters. Every time you write, you discover something new about language and yourself.
When I look back at my old notes, I see my progress. Mistakes, yes, but also growth.
Exactly. Writing shows your journey. It's not about perfection, it's about expression.
So if you're learning English, write a little every day. Be curious about words and let them lead you forward.
Because writing isn't just practice, it's discovery.
And every word you write is proof that you're growing.
Stay curious, keep learning, and remember, curiosity is the best teacher you'll ever have.
Thank you for joining us.
Keep exploring, keep noticing, and keep following your curiosity.